Good evening. Welcome to Athens City Council. It's Monday, April 8th, 2013. 7:15, we're beginning this evening with discussion of a public hearing for zoning the area along East State Street, which was the former Columbia Gas property. This is a public hearing meeting, so if you have come in late, which I think a couple people did, there is a sign-in sheet we would like you to sign. It's on the corner of the table. Kathy, can you pass, I think this young lady back here snuck in. Back here. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Okay, public hearing. Who is going to speak to us about it?
Essentially this is Columbia Gas on East State Street. We are annexing it in. Of course, we have to do a zoning designation. If you were to look at the map over there, the brilliant, nice purple area, I believe, it's all manufacturing, that particular zone, or industrial, so we thought we'd just put it in there so it matches.
This is the piece of property right there.
That's it right there, yes. And that's what you're looking at. It's about 15 acres. What else you need to know about it? Hopefully it'll get some development. It's in the floodplain, so that's always an issue too. But other than that, manufacturing is where we're going with it, just to be consistent. Does that help?
Anybody have comment or question?
On an area that's zoned like this is going to be, could something like a farmer's market set up shop there?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, they could. It's let's see, I forget the price it's going for these days, and the intention, of course, is to develop it into some kind of industrial,
Correct.
commercial zone.
Sure.
Yeah. In theory, it's nice and open right now. In theory, they could just drop right in there if they own the property or they made an agreement with whoever does own it.
Mm-hmm.
Manufacturing is pretty much wide open what you can put in there, except the only prohibition is residential. In a manufacturing zone, you can't have residential in there.
Uh-huh.
Does that answer your question?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Sounds ideal.
Other council members?
Well, I'd just like to say that this is the last step of a multi-step project, and it's good to finally have it coming to a finalization. So thanks to all the city employees that helped out with this, and the landowners who have been patient and working along with everything.
Again, it's a gap in there. There's a couple other places that need to be filled out, but depends on what you're trying to do, really. I mean, that area it's been languishing for quite some time.
Right.
So we'll see what happens
Right.
now that it gets annexed in. Mostly lack of sewer and water.
This land was outside the city of Athens, and now that it's being annexed, the tax income from that,
Real estate tax, it's not a lot because it's open space.
but once it's developed,
Yes. If I remember correctly, we had a discussion about whether we wanted to turn money over to the township, Canaan Township.
Mm-hmm.
That was bandied about 6 months ago, 8 months ago.
Yeah.
I think we decided not to go that route.
Correct. So,
Anything else? Anything from the public? No?
anybody else have a question or comment about this particular issue?
I believe the intention is to divide it up into 3 5-acre lots eventually. I think that's what was
I
planned.
think that's what I
although it's
heard.
not platted yet like that, as far as I know.
Okay, so this will be on our agenda next week for first reading.
Okay.
Is that correct, or is it?
I thought, weren't we in, wasn't it in train already? No?
yeah, I think it's in train, and
Yeah.
we did a first reading. We did a committee hearing, and I think first reading on the recommendations that Planning Commission sent us.
Okay.
Okay. So, with that, we will move along to our Finance and Personnel Committee. Member Nisley is the chair of the committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have 4 agenda items tonight and a few miscellaneous items. The first project that we'll be talking about is the Nature Works grant, and Council Member Patterson has some updates for us.
Yeah, as you remember, when this was introduced, the plan was basically to increase the playground area or add a playground pad down at the West State Street Park. But in kind of further exploring options throughout the city, there are a couple other plans that are being explored, some of which have ADA elements to them, which is important for the city. One of them may be including a rubberized surface at one of the area playgrounds here in the city. Another might be looking at possible access to within one of our city parks up at Sells Park. But there are some other plans that are being looked at. One of the things that we're having to be very cognizant of, though, with this is the cost for some of these projects.
Member Patterson, could you speak a little more about the possibilities of those other two options?
Sure. One is, as a lot of you are aware, that there's a pond at Sells Park, which has a mooring bench that the Birth Circle received approval to have put in. I think Member Butler was one of the individuals spearheading that. But to get up and be able to enjoy that space in one of our city parks for an individual with significant physical disabilities or disabilities of any type would be hard-pressed to be able to enjoy that part of our city park. So that's one potential project, would be to have an access ramp to accommodate those with disabilities. The other would be the playground area, the small playground area that's down at right outside the community center. Kind of in between where the swimming pool is and the community center building itself, there's a playground area, and the footprint of that looks to be a manageable size to have the rubberized surface, much like the rubberized surface that we're putting in over at the South Side Park, over on Dairy Lane and South Richland Avenue. There is a third that came up, which was the possibility of improving or building a tennis court area. But again, all of these require a lot of, I think, a lot more exploration. I'm meeting with the city engineer and as well as Rich Campitelli down at Parks and Recreation to, again, look at some of these venues to see what can be done. And, sorry, just to, again, kind of clarify, as I brought up before, the NatureWorks grant, it is a match. It's a 25% match. The county has been allocated a little over $22,000 for this particular project. So for a match coming from the city, it would be $77,600, somewhere in that neighborhood, for our match to a project like that at 20%. And again, it's a reimbursement form of a grant.
Mayor, I think you started to say something.
It's a competitive grant, so the chance of getting it, of course, depends on who else applies and how it looks. All the projects we have might be in excess of the 29, 30,000, so we have to look and say what's manageable. Recognizing Sells Park is, it's been discussed before, of trying to put some kind of accessibility to the pond. But again, that's a primitive park, and the slope may not be workable. It might be too much of an incline to actually make it feasible to run that. So we're thinking about, we're looking at the different options just to put a good package together and apply. And that's really what we just need is, the ability to apply.
And when is the grant deadline?
Oh, coming up real
Yes,
quick.
you're already doing the readings,
Right.
and so the decision will be made this week, but they want to look at the engineering for the ADA design. And he hasn't forgotten Highland Park either, so that's also one that will be looked at, but kind of right up against to make that decision. So you will know before a final reading.
I think the application deadline's May 1.
Yeah. So it is coming up quickly, as Service Safety Director stated.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question, Member
Yes.
Patterson. You mentioned the county. Did you mean to say that? Is the county in on this?
Yes.
It's a competitive grant.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, for the grant itself.
They have a grant going in a separate way.
No, the
no,
allocation
the
for the
money
22,000 is for the entire county. Last cycle, I think it went to Nelsonville for something, was it their pool, I think? Something to do with their upgrade of their pool. So it is competitive. For many years, we had it running because there weren't a lot of other applications, actually. A lot of smaller villages don't have the 25% match. or they hesitate to commit to that. So, you know, I think Nelsonville brought it up, and I was able to, got it for 1 year. We had several cycles of it ourselves already.
This falls under ODNR, so it's ODNR funding that's going through NatureWorks, and then NatureWorks allocates out, as I understand it, to the counties, to the 88 counties.
Okay, any other questions? All right. The next item is the Ohio Municipal League Joint Liability Insurance, and this is a policy that we pay. And as I understand, the current quotes that we have for this, we either have a one-year quote or we have a three-year option. And obviously, the three-year option renewal would save a considerable amount of money, about $43,000. And Councilmember Patterson has some additional details on that.
Yeah, this is, this particular grant, the Municipal League Joint Self-Insurance Pool has been around since, I believe it was first entered into in 1998, again, on a three-year rotating basis. The funding, again, it would, for the insurance funds themselves for liability, it would be coming from the various accounts. There's going to be coming from, again, the general fund, which would be about $20,000 plus, street, $65, rec would be $2,523. Parking garage, $3,222. Water has several accounts that the monies would come out of for that. And it looks to be somewhere on the order of about $17,000 total coming out of those accounts. Sewer has two accounts, actually three accounts, $15,000, $1,000, and $429 coming from that. And then internal services for $181, which again, in looking at the funding, breaking it across the 3 years, would make it $194,120 for each year. But then also a surplus that would fall within that first year of $89,098. That would be a one-time surplus that would come from, that would come up front and not to be reoccurrent for the year 2 and 3.
Question?
So we need to appropriate some money from those different funds, into those different funds so we can pay this. Kathy, is there anything you need to add on this or no?
I don't think so. The total needed is about 78,000, is that correct? Yeah. for all
Additional
of them.
appropriations.
Yeah, about 20,000 out of the general fund and then all the other funds, so. We need this. I don't know.
What does the insurance cover us for?
It covers buildings, boilers, machinery, general liability, public officials, errors and omissions, EMS, which really doesn't have any because it's zero. I see that. Law enforcement, inland marine. I think that's covered too. I don't see the boiler machinery in there. I guess I don't know why.
Yeah, it is.
Okay. Automobile liability. Again, this is the self-insurance pool. We go in with everybody else, all the other municipal league members, and if we choose to. We could always go outside and look for other carriers, I imagine, but this, this works pretty well as an entity. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a question. So we've been with this particular group for quite some time?
Yes. If I backtrack,
And they served us well?
They have indeed.
And did I hear, we are looking at the three-year option for you?
Yes.
So, and it's only the $78,252 that additional appropriation that we would need at this point to move forward with
for this year,
for this year.
This year.
we'll make sure we budget it next year.
In another related, semi-related issue for appropriations, then we also have medical payments. And this is the city's self-insures for the medical payments for their employees. And previous allocations for that had been $12,300 per person for the year. And we found, I think it was last year, we made a minor adjustment to that based on the history of payments that we've made for the medical insurance. And likewise, again, we have some updates from the auditor's office that lead us to a recommendation to increase the medical payments so that we're setting aside enough money during the year to be able to pay for that. Councilmember Patterson, Auditor Heck, additional information that's needed?
Well, no, as you said, we decided last year because if you recall, we made several additional appropriations at the end of the year because we didn't have enough money in there to pay our bills. So administratively, the Finance Committee and the Mayor agreed to increase the contributions to $15,000 per employee from the different funds. However, looking at it again this year, we're not sure that's going to be enough. That previous amount hadn't been raised in about 6 years. And so we're thinking about raising it to $18,000 if possible, and we have the figures for how much that would be. The other side to that is we probably don't need quite that much. However, we have been told by our auditors in the past that we should have a cushion in our medical fund of 2 to 6 months, which we did not have last year. And so if we did go ahead and increase this year, when we feel we have the money in there, then that will help us at the end of the year with our carryover too. And if there are any large claims that come up throughout the year. Or increases in costs, whatever. So we do have a listing of how much would be almost $300,000 out of the general fund that we would need additionally if we go to the $18,000 from the $15,000.
Which will
And-
take a bite out of the unappropriated resources for the general fund.
So the unappropriated
Yeah.
resources balance in the general fund right now is $480,000. That was as of March 19th. I don't know if we have anything that's more.
I don't think we do.
A little bit,
Probably
but nothing.
wouldn't,
Yeah.
so,
Right, yeah.
so we're, okay.
I would change it, yeah.
And I would think, just as you're budgeting at home, the same would be true here. If we know these expenses are likely going to be happening, and we have auditors advising us that we should have a cushion, I think we're better off to say, we need to appropriate that now, so that we're not scrambling to look for the money at the end of the year and being in the hole because of that. Councilmember Gosnell.
I may have missed the numbers a little bit. What are we contributing right now per employee? Is it 12 something?
It's
15,000. That just
15,000.
became effective at the beginning of the year.
Okay.
And that
Previously it
was
was 12.
put in the
5.
budget, the mayor's budget, from 12.5.
So what we're discussing now is almost 50% more
Mm-hmm.
per employee than it was a year ago. That seems really high. I understand we need a cushion, we depleted.
Well, that's what we
depleted
budgeted,
what we
but as
had.
you recall, we appropriated over 100,000
Right.
at the end of the year. One of the appropriations was around 100,000. So, yeah, it's really high, but as I said, we hadn't increased that amount, and previously, we had done that, tried to increase it smaller increments every year, and we just didn't seem to need it, but it caught up with us last year. And so now we're catching up, so it does seem high. We could run the figures for, 16.5, 17,000 and see if we think we can get by with that. But I do definitely believe we're gonna need more than 15,000 per employee.
It seems like it'll eat up a huge amount of the general fund.
Yes, it would.
Unappropriated
Wow.
resources, and it's early in the year to be out of general fund.
Well, the problem is if we wait till the end of the year, it might not be there.
I understand, yeah.
That's my other reason for not wanting to wait too long. If we get to the end of the year and we don't have enough money in there, and we've, spent all the general fund unappropriated balance, then what do we do?
That would be tough. When was the last time we looked at, we compared the cost of self-insurance versus going outside for a plan?
It's been a while, to my knowledge, although it's been talked about. However, I know the last time, and it might be, it's been 5 years now, but we can talk to our auditors again this year, but we've always been advised that self-insuring is the way to go. I believe OU is self-insured.
That may have been the-
County Community Action is self-insured. It really is the way to go, but, you know, we could ask.
I think it might be a good idea considering it's 50% more than, what's proposed is 50% higher than a year ago. And so maybe the pricing has changed compared to going outside. But
Well, I think
something
we
to
all
look
know
into.
that the costs have gone up every year, and we just weren't making those adjustments. It's
Right.
kind of an issue we talk about with sewer rates. If you don't increase them a small amount every year, then all of a sudden, you have to, you know, institute a very large raise. And that's what we did. We just haven't gone up. We've been able to stay under that, and, you know, we don't always know what our bills are going to be from one year to the next. Of course, we can estimate, but it's well over 2 million. It was about 2.6 million just last year for our costs. So it's, you know, no small part of our budget to begin with.
But worth, as Councilmember Gosney is saying, maybe checking again to see what other options we might have.
Not to preclude this move, but just looking towards the future to make sure that we're on top of what the costs are.
Sure. Yeah, I think if we do that, we should do the research and take our time. In the
Right.
meantime, we want to make sure we have the money there. It can always be unappropriated later on. So.
I have a quick question. What sort of wellness and other sort of steps can the city take? I know we give the community center memberships, but what sort of programs and stuff do we have instituted? And have you, looked at things beyond that so that we help to?
Well,
our-
first of all, this would be a human resources person duty to do that, okay? However, I'm happy to talk to her about it as, or Mayor Ken. She would do the research, and she has worked on that. Safety Day incorporates health and wellness. I don't know if I can say this, I think it went out to all the employees, kind of boot camp for people with diabetes to help them, and I think it's very much in her, line of sight to work on things like that and help the employees.
Great.
And
So,
then you have a whole spectrum of people who take advantage or who don't.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and
Yeah, I don't think we can force people to do those
Right.
kinds of things.
But some people in the community say, oh, well, that's just seems like frivolous that we're paying for something like that. But in the long run, if you have people with diabetes and they manage it better, it's better spent money.
Absolutely, it's,
So,
it's a big
besides
health
a,
issue,
a quality of life issue, I think,
sure.
so.
Something I'd like to add with what Member Fall was just saying, and as well as Member Gosney, something that I have heard of and worth looking into if we are going to start looking at other possible options for the future is that there are a number of programs out there that do include a wellness in it where there are actual breaks or deductions that show up based upon wellness. Why pay a lot for insurance if you're always healthy? And if you're healthy, that's a good thing for the community, good thing for the government. So well worth looking into. Another thing I just wanted to mention real quick, because I know we're talking about money, and this is actually for people viewing tonight, and that is that when we're talking about 15,000 or 18,000 or what used to be 12.5 for the employees, that's coming out of the actual budget line. It's coming out of the department's budget, not that the individuals, what they're contributing is going up
Yes.
to 15,000 or 18,000, whatever. So just wanted to make sure that's clear to everyone.
Thank
who
you.
may not
Yeah,
know.
that's another issue is the employees for the city are pretty lucky in the amount that we pay compared to the coverage we get, that we contribute. And that's been an issue over the years, and we've tried to increase that a little bit. But yes, this amount of money is transferred out of the department budgets, as Member Patterson said, and it's no increase to any employees' contributions.
simply set aside per employee, what we estimate. And again, it goes up and down depending on the health of our employees at any given time.
And the employees, actually, the majority of the employees are now paying the 35% of their fixed costs. Some, based on labor agreements, are somewhat less, but they're all getting pretty close to that, so they are contributing.
Just one other thing I might add that Laura just reminded me of. She's done a lot of the research on this, and any information that the Finance Committee has came from her hard work. is that last year, at the end of the year, even after at least 2 special appropriations towards the end of the year, we only had $25,000 to carry over. Our bills per month, including prescription, stop loss, all of our bills average about $200,000 a month. So, and if there's anybody else that wants any of this information that wasn't at the Finance Committee meeting, we're happy to share. But just to put it in perspective, it's medical care is very expensive.
But we can certainly check with the Human Resources Director. That would be helpful to get some
Right.
additional information
And
on other
we-
options and health prevention programs.
Yeah, because we're self-insured, we have our third-party administrator that we're pretty happy with, and they, work with, entities on things like that too. She could get, advice and information and see what might work for us if it seems worthwhile.
Every year we have a employee safety day, which covers everything from workplace safety, like how to deal around electrical works, to how to de-stress and ear protection, eye protection. So we work our way through different topics. We try keeping it year in and year out a little bit different to keep it fresh. But and again, you can only do so much. And I'm one of the I should exercise more, and I don't. I have a trouble trying to go to the community centers. I'm going to walk around a track, so. I'm probably somebody who should be doing more exercise and better lifestyle choices.
The Safety Day does seem to be well received, and there were a number of different kinds of skits and role playing that people did last year at the event. So hopefully that'll continue to get wide participation in that. No other questions, we'll move on to the next item, and this is under miscellaneous. What we have is an update on the university estates. You may remember that we began the first reading for a resolution of necessity for assessments to begin so that we could begin to prepare for the road repairs in the university estates area. What we have learned is that the deadline for the county auditor's office of having the amounts for the assessment due to be filed on the taxes need to be in by September 9th. So we are, number one, wanting to consider next week's second reading to have a suspension of the rules to do that so that we can get moving along in the process. There seemed to be unanimous agreement to move forward with that. We do have some 2 changes to the resolution. One is at the suggestion of the bonds legal counsel that is working with the city auditor's office, and they have suggested the adding of 1 sentence given this very tight deadline for us, and that reads, at the city's option, such assessments may be levied and collected when the final assessable cost of the project has been determined, which may be before the project is commenced or completed. I think Andy, Director of Public Works, Andy Stone, has every intention of having this happen, having the work commencing, so it's not so much that, but that language has been added in. The other thing that has been changed is the final amount of the appropriation. The estimate last week was at $648,000, and we now have information on the amount of interest that will be charged on the money that we borrow for this, and so that new amount will be $684,000. So I am rounding that number slightly, I know, but that's within a few $100s of that. So that's the basic, those are the changes to the assessment process right now. Any questions or additional information that?
Just a form, so then on Monday, it would be modified?
Correct.
And then read again? Okay.
And read again, yes,
And
And then
suspended.
passed.
And suspended on
suspended.
Monday.
correct.
And this is the first step. The reason, it sounds like September 9th is way far away.
I know.
But there's a lot of steps with this process. So this is just the first step, and then the other steps will
You have
come
to get
along.
out
So
there.
that's why we're doing the suspension and,
Correct. That's
It
what
does
Jess-
need to start now.
right.
It does
I mean, it's
immediately.
just for the sidewalks we've seen, you have to set up the same process, so.
Right. And so there are 2 or 3 additional ordinances that will be involved after that for the actual.
Once the assessment letters go out to the property owners, they have 30 days to pay that before we can certify it to the county. So there's 1 month right there that we, we'll be waiting.
So we will be working out a timeline for you to keep you apprised of the next steps in the process, something similar to what we did with the wastewater treatment plant, and moving forward with that. Another miscellaneous item, and this relates to Councilmember Gosney's announcement last week that we will have a street tour coming up on April 13th. And once again, the public is invited to attend if you notify the clerk of council, Debbie Walker, that you were coming, so we just make sure we have enough transportation for everybody. And I did want to present just a little bit of background information so that people are apprised of what happens on the tour, but from the financial perspective, what's involved with the street repairs during the year. We do have several accounts that bring in revenue for the streets. We have an account 220 that is labeled Street Fund. We also have state highway tax and wheel tax that comes in. We also have what's called street rehab money, and this is by far our largest account. The amount in the unappropriated balance right now is $1.28 million. And you might be aware that out of that, recently, we have designated some monies for design of our upcoming projects, Richland Avenue South being one of those, also our Columbus Road improvements. And then out of the street fund, we have approximately $170,000 that's been appropriated for design of the bike path spur. So I did want to kind of put that in perspective of the different kinds of accounts that come into being for what kind of street repairs we have during the year. It's not only a street tour that we'll be taking Saturday, but it's also kind of an infrastructure tour, because that's one of the things that Andy Stone, Director of Public Works, is coordinating now, is that when we're tearing apart the road on Court Street to look at a tunnel, a 150-year-old sewer tunnel, we're also looking curbs, sidewalk, bricks by the time we finish, and trying to take advantage of all of that. For a little bit of perspective, because I know that we often do receive citizen comments about the state of the roads this time of year, and so what's happening with it. And we sometimes do cold patch repair, and I know there's a comment, well, cold patch just won't work, for very long. Well, that's true, but the reality is that we don't have hot mix available until there's some major projects going on, so we can't even, begin to do that. After the tour, our Department of Public Works goes through decision criteria, and they look at the age and condition of the road, the number of citizens served, impact of the failure, what kind of mandates there might be, say from the EPA, and cost and grants that are available. And I can share with you financially that since 2005, the annual repair money that we have spent for our city roads is $2.5 million. And when we combine that with the other project paving that Director of Public Works Stone and his crew have put together with other grant monies, it's $5.5 million that we've spent on paving. So I hope this helps put things in perspective. Sometimes it seems like large, amounts of money that we might be allocating for different projects, but I think the staff at the city is piecing it together in a very constructive way, and it's helping the city. And we deal with, as many other cities do, aging infrastructure and limited amounts of income. So we have medical payments that we're considering tonight by way of finances, but then on the other hand, we say, we have other expenses that come up with the city. So just wanted to kind of make an aside comment from about that.
And just to mention that a lot of times the cheapest portion is the road construction, the infrastructure that goes underneath in terms of the water, sewer, storm sewer. Even the discussion right now we're having about trying to, when we did the streetscape, 10 years ago on Court Street, there was a conversation about trying to put some fiber optics under there. Of course, we weren't ready to do it, we didn't do it. But the idea is, if, you know, to make a better city, what do you put underneath the ground? And then, of course, you have the outside, you know, Frontier, you have Columbia Gas, and you remember last year Columbia Gas was very busy all over the place, sometimes in the road and sometimes out of the road, and these also impact what happens here. So we, you know, it's easy to say let's fix this road, but if there's something we're gonna have to do a year later, it's not a wise decision to just pave it and then have to chew it up again.
Right, which is, yeah, part of the situation, yeah, with Richland South. Councilmember Pappy.
And having sat on the Transportation Committee, I mean, when we have our meetings just with Andy Stone, you know, we go through the projects one by one. He's discussing that. I feel like it's a very fluid process, and yes, he has a list of things to do, but he answers our questions, and we have issues. And I think it's very cohesive, the way it all comes together, that there is a plan. I think sometimes out there in the world, people don't think there's a plan, you know, and, you know, if there is a particular area that citizens are feeling isn't getting taken care of, make sure you let somebody know. Make sure your council member knows, or you can call Director Stone's office or Service Safety Director. I mean,
Sure.
if there, you know, sometimes there are areas that people just kind of, you know, neglect, or I wouldn't say neglect, just, you know, you forget about. So,
Right.
you know, you just have to speak up and let people know that.
Yes, President.
No, I just, and that's what infrastructure tour will do. Will yield a plan. Director Stone and his staff will take the information gathered and then develop a plan. And some of the issues that we see on the tour may not fit the criteria for this summer's work. It may be delayed for one reason or another. So, but it's quite a good look at the city's infrastructure. And again, it begins at 8:30 here at the city building. If you wish to come, as the member, as we've just heard, you need to call the clerk of council and make a reservation.
And again, we have projects that are ongoing, and we have to stagger them. For instance, we're talking about doing Columbus Road this year. We're talking about doing Oxbow Bridge. We still have to do West Union, but you wouldn't want to tie up West Union, Oxbow, Richland, and Columbus Road at the same time. It becomes a traffic nightmare at that point. And again, we have the South Y area all the way down Richland from Dairy Lane downward, and we're not even halfway there with the money putting that together. And when you talk about criteria of roads, the public works dollars that we try for every year, they basically have a scoring system depending if it's arterial, collector road, and how much traffic goes on it, and the condition of the road too. And that's about $400,000. And I say $400,000 because if you go over that, you actually lose points. So everybody always tries hovering just below $400,000 and leveraging it if possible. And again, that's what did the Carpenter Street. That's I forget what the other one was. We didn't do Grosvenor with that. That was local.
Jeff Hill?
Jeff Hill, yeah. So we find projects to leverage that money in there. And again, some of it's coming out of water and sewer. Some of it's coming out of straight roads. And, you want to have cities, you got to build roads, I guess.
Councilmember Eisner.
Yes, I just want to know, or remind me, what plans are in the works for this summer? What are the driving?
Oxbow Bridge repair is the big one that will be happening.
Yeah, you'll notice that, I'm sure. I'm living on the south side.
But that's the most critical one for us.
And it's a bridge.
And it is a bridge. And so it's one of our 5 bridges here, our major bridges. And so it's just built in the 30s, hasn't had major renovations, so it's just critical for that to happen. So.
And actually, doing the construction last year of Carriage Hill Bridge, the Carriage Hill area, that became part of a credit, our local match. We actually could take that as a credit towards the Oxbow Bridge. Interesting how this works, but it does. And of course, Columbus Road is going to be the major one there. They're still working in-house with the design. I believe Andy's talking about having a stakeholders meeting eventually, as soon as he gets all the work out of it.
Basically informing the public and the business owners of how the project will proceed and aware of impacts in advance.
They'll probably tell you all about it. And then there's that little one like the wastewater treatment plant, which is going to roll us up for a while.
That is, yeah. And plus then the design engineering for the Columbus Road at least the engineering component of it, yeah. Councilmember Butler.
Thank you. And just a brief comment on the Oxbow Bridge. It's a collaboration with university because they have a lot of parts underneath the bridge, and we're working with them to communicate the improvements. That's correct.
Yes.
They're expending about $400,000 in terms of the internal upgrades, their external upgrades they're doing.
I think that's 3.5 million total, so.
Councilmember Patterson.
I would just like to reiterate the fact that, again, this tour is available to anyone to come. And if you can't make it, as I've been walking through neighborhoods, I've been hearing individuals saying, can you please put my street on that list? So, which is another thing, is that people living in the neighborhoods can at least voice something that they feel needs to be looked at.
And Andy always prepares a very nice PowerPoint presentation that's available in hard copy, so maybe we could make that available too as a public document for people
on the
who
web,
couldn't attend.
maybe.
Put it on the website, I think would be helpful, just to begin to share more of that information. I mean, that department operates not only with an annual street plan, but also, a 5-year infrastructure plan. So this is one component of it.
I would like to clarify one thing, and I hear what you're saying, and everybody, it's my street. There will reach a point that we only have this 3-hour tour kind of effect. There also is this point of capacity, and people in the past, sometimes some have just chosen to drive along behind or only want to attend certain parts. But at this time, we've only got the one bus and one driver reserved. So get your reservations in now.
And once you're on the bus, you're on
Yeah,
until the
yeah,
end of
you're
it.
on the
And it
bus.
is at least a 3-hour tour, so people should be aware of that, yeah. One other mention is we talk about coordinating things, and it's not necessarily related to finances, but it is a request from Director of Public Works, Andy Stone, for some volunteers for pedestrian count. He's doing a citywide kind of survey of this, and he does have needs of volunteers to sit at least for several hours. If they can for a 4-hour block of time would be even better, so to contact him at the city. But the dates that he's looking to have people do these pedestrian crosswalk counts are April 15, 17, 19, and then April 22, 24, 26, and that's between 11:30 a.m. and 3:30 p.m. And similar to when the bike and pedestrian group volunteered a number of years ago to do the counts as we developed the bike plan. It's the same kind of thing. You'll be given instructions and a sheet to do a tally, and on a nice spring day, sitting outside in Athens. So Andy Stone could really use some volunteers, so please feel free to contact him.
Chris, I believe you had one more, and we're not sure, but this is about the bus shelters and the grant from the Community Action Agency.
Yes, that's one final appropriation. Thank you for remembering. This was an item where the grant was approved in 2011 for 6 additional bus shelters, and as part of that, we are finally now moving forward, and we do need to reappropriate the cost share portion. It's a $45,000 grant. The city committed to $5,000 cost share back in 2011. So those appropriations, when they haven't been spent, need to be reappropriated again. And we're ready to move forward with the bus shelter. So I would like to bring that forward on the appropriation as well.
I want to check on that, just make sure the numbers are okay. And the reason why I say that is because I think it is it's reimbursable, which means we're talking about $50,000 that we'd have to have in the kitty to do that.
To get
And
40
$5,000
and we'll
would
get
be the-
$45,000 back. And this particular grant, when it was awarded, although Athens Transit goes through HAPCAP now, at the time it was awarded, we were still operating Athens Transit, I think, through the city, which is why the grant was awarded to the city. So,
And again, we didn't utilize it because we were having this discussion of changing the routes. And the hope is that we'll find some good places for this. Especially since, if you remember from the presentation, we're trying to get away from a hail system to a bus system, bus stop system.
One thing that we also talked about, and the mayor was at our project meeting last week, is that because we don't administer most of the transportation funds anymore, there's not much money in that fund, and we will most likely have to borrow money from another fund to get put in the transportation fund to pay for the shelters until we get our reimbursement, which we have done in the past. Typically, we borrow either from the cap fund or the general fund, and council would have to, of course, approve that. And usually we just put right in the ordinance, when that reimbursement comes back, it goes right back into the fund that we borrowed the money from.
Yeah.
Because there just won't be the fund balance in there to pay for that up front.
Okay. I think that's it for the Finance Committee.
Okay. Finance and Personnel Committee. Any other committee chairs have anything we need to talk about? Mayor?
Nope,
No?
good.
Then it is just 8 o'clock. And